So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julie Wong. I'm from the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto. I'd like to welcome you to our Advances in Dementia Research webinar series that is presented by the Toronto Dementia Research Alliance in partnership with the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto. This webinar series discusses recent updates in dementia research and highlights dementia research studies that are occurring all across Toronto. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. I am going to ask that you keep yourselves on mute. Please do feel free as the webinar is happening to submit your questions throughout the session through the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of the session. This session is being recorded and will be posted on both the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto YouTube channel as well as the TDRA website. As such, I am going to ask that you refrain from posting any personal information in the chat. So today, just a little bit of introduction. So you've already heard a little bit about me, but I'm going to introduce you to the Alzheimer's Society in case you are not familiar, as well as to the TDRA. And then there will be a bit about brain health and reducing risk. There will be presentation of a study, some chances for you to ask some questions, as well as closing remarks. So a little bit about the Alzheimer's Society of Toronto, or AST for short. We are an organization that provides information, education, and support to people who are living with dementia and their family and friends, healthcare professionals, as well as the general public within the M-POSA code. We service all dementias, and the diagnosis is not required to access our programs and services. Our services are offered both in person as well as virtually through Zoom and the ALS Educate e-learning platform. So to learn a little bit more about the full variety of programs and services that we have to offer, I would encourage you to visit our website at www.alz.to and take a look at our calendar of events for upcoming offerings. I'd also now like to take an opportunity to introduce you to the TDRA, or the Toronto Dementia Research Alliance. Established in 2012, the TDRA is a collaboration among the University of Toronto, Baycrest, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, Ontario Shore Centre for Mental Health Sciences, Sunnybrook, and the University Health Network. Together with its partners, the TDRA aims to combine basic science and clinical research to better prevent and treat dementia. So I'd like to take this time to introduce you to Victoria Telford, who is from the TDRA, to guide you through a little bit more.
Thanks so much, Julie, and thanks for everybody for joining today. So like Julie mentioned, the TDRA is based out of Toronto. A little bit more about the TDRA, if you're not familiar, we do have a research studies portal located on our website. So this is where TDRA affiliated researchers can post their studies in plain language for the general community to browse studies that might be applicable to them. So they're dementia research studies that are open for participation across the city of Toronto. Like I mentioned, all of the studies are posted in plain language, so they should be easy to understand for anybody to review. And through this portal, people can be matched to a study through a screening questionnaire, or they can self-refer to a study that might be of interest to them. Could you go to the next slide? Thanks, Julie. So, like I mentioned, there's two streams to be enrolled in a research study. So, the first path would be to read through the studies. If you think you're interested and eligible for a study, you can self-refer, which means submit your own contact information, and the research study team will reach back out to you. Otherwise, if you're not sure of what kind of study you're interested in, or you're not sure what study you would be eligible for, or where the studies take place, all that good stuff, you can fill in a screening questionnaire. Those those questionnaires get sent directly to TDRA research coordinators. We review them and then we reach back out to offer proper study options that you might be eligible for and answer any questions that you might have. So if anybody is interested in reviewing these, I will post the link to our research studies portal in the chat, and you're welcome to go browse through there. So I want to briefly introduce our two speakers for today. Julie did mention that we have two speakers that will be presenting. So the first speaker will be Dr. Nicole Anderson. She is the Associate Scientific Director of the Kimmel Family Center for Brain Health and Wellness. It's directed at personalized dementia risk reduction. She's also the director of the Ben and Hilda Katz Interprofessional Research Center in Geriatric and Dementia Care at Baycrest Academy for Research and Education. She'll be speaking to you first, and then we will have a presentation by Paulina Rudziak. She's the Community Engagement and Research Coordinator for Baycrest Academy for Research and Education. She educates communities on brain health and leads a research study aimed at improving accessibility of Cognicity's brain health screening tool. So that's what she's going to be presenting on later in this webinar. So I want to hand it over to Dr. Anderson, who will be presenting first on general brain health, reducing dementia risk, and slowing dementia progression.
Okay. Share my slides. Okay. Does that look good? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm going to give you a very brief overview of what's been discovered in terms of lifestyle behaviors to both reduce risk of dementia, but even once people have it, the evidence has shown helps to slow its progression. So basically, what's good for prevention is good for slowing progression. So the first factor that we can address is to try to stay as physically healthy as possible. I think a lot of people forget that anything that's affecting us from the neck on down in terms of our health is also affecting our brain. And our brain is the most vulnerable organ in our body. So it's important to stay in as good physical health as possible. And we can do that by getting our regular checkups, keeping our blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugars in check or under control, using glasses and hearing aids if you need them. Both uncorrected vision loss and hearing loss are both risk factors for dementia and make living with dementia more difficult as well. To stop smoking if you currently are, to limit or eliminate alcohol intake, to maintain a healthy weight. Being both underweight and overweight is not good for brain health. So you want to be in that nice, sweet middle spot. And there's a lot of research about the power of exercise in both reducing dementia risk and in also keeping people in as best of brain health possible when they do have dementia. Historically, this research focused on aerobic exercise, but what it's finding now is that resistance training or strength training has equal benefits for cognitive and brain health. And research is even moving towards just understanding the importance of moving, of leading an active lifestyle, and not sitting too often, but getting up and moving about to keep that blood flowing through up to our brain. Now, whenever I'm feeling lazy, I think of this slide. Seeing if I have a pointer here. Yeah, okay. All right. So this is a really old study, but it really it inspires me regardless. So these are really old brain images. They're projected against kind of a matrix here, a grid. These top two are taken from the side. And so we have the front of the brain, the top of the brain, the back of the brain, and the bottom, and the same thing over here. And the bottom two are taken from a bird's eye view, top on down. And so we have the front of the brain, a side, the back, and a side, and same thing there. And the two lighter images on the left here are showing all of the areas of the brain, both in the gray matter, which is predominantly the outsides of our brains containing most of the neurons, as well as in the white matter, which is on the insides of our brain. And it's like long highway tracks sending information from one region to another. So all of the areas that are shaded are areas that shrink with age. And it's pretty much our entire brains shrink with age. Um, and this is not something that starts when we hit 65, but rather our brains are as big as they're ever going to be in our early 20s and slowly start shrinking from there. However, over here on the right, in the darker images, it's showing all of the areas in which this normal age-related brain shrinkage or atrophy is offset among older adults who are physically fit. And it's pretty much the same picture, saying that by staying physically fit, you can really put the brakes on this normal age-related brain shrinkage. So what should we do to stay physically active? Well, the Canadian guidelines are 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous aerobic activity a week. That sounds like an awful lot if you're not exercising currently. The recommendations are not to go from 0 to 150 overnight. That wouldn't be safe, but to gradually increase up to that. And really, it just amounts to about 22 minutes a day as well. So it's really not as much as it sounds like. Plus 2 to 3 sessions of strength training a week so that we can stay functional. And then if you're over 65, to include some exercises that focus on balance as well to help to reduce falls. The other area that we can address, both to reduce risk of dementia and to help slow its progression, is our diet. So I used to have lots of very complicated slides about what we should eat, but I've replaced it with the Canada Food Guide because they really got it right this time in terms of what does a brain healthy diet look like. And what it's telling us is that half of what we eat should be fruits and vegetables for all the good minerals that they give us, and also for their antioxidant properties. A quarter of what we eat should be lean sources of protein. So moving away from the red meat here, having just a little bit of that if you eat that, and moving towards more lean sources of protein and meat alternatives like legumes. And then a quarter of what we eat should be whole grains, because whole grains are good for gut health. And we now know that the gut and the brain are directly linked, and what's good for the gut is good for the brain. Now, as part of the Canadian Consortium on Neurodegeneration and Aging, a brain health food guide was created that agrees with this dietary pattern, but also emphasizes certain foods as well. So among the fruits, they recommend focusing on berries. For nuts, focusing on walnuts. In our vegetables, on raw leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables. So that's like our broccoli and our cauliflower and bok choy. And then focusing on fatty fish for the omega-3s as well. Mental health is also very important. Older adults who have clinical levels of anxiety or depression are both at an elevated risk of developing dementia, and that interferes or accelerates progression of dementia as well. Sleep disorders become more common as we get older, and that's really important for 2 reasons. One, we know that we're consolidating long-term memories during our sleep. When we're in those deep stages of sleep, our hippocampus, the area of the brain that's most important for memory, is busy chattering away with the rest of the brain, literally replaying the day over and over again and laying down new long-term memories. And so if your sleep is disrupted, this consolidation of new long-term memory is also disrupted. And secondly, a fairly recent discovery is that it's actually normal for us to build up the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease during the day. But during sleep, we help clear them out. And so again, if your sleep is disrupted, clearing out the plaques is also disrupted as well. So it's important to address these things. First, for stress, which is just everyday stress that we all deal with. It could be a formal program like a Tai Chi or yoga or meditation program, or really anything that helps you to reduce your stress levels. You should see that you should be able to think a little bit more clearly. So if, for you, that's listening to music or going for a walk. Again, you should see that you should feel that you can think more clearly. For managing anxiety and depression, either the counseling and or the medication route, whatever works for you in consultation with your doctor, not only will you feel better in terms of your mood, but it would reduce the risk of dementia as well or slow progression of dementia. For managing sleep disorders, limit caffeine intake after a certain time of the day. It has a long half-life, meaning that it stays active in our bodies for quite a long time. And so if you have a cup of coffee after dinner, it's still going to be active in your system when you're trying to go to sleep and keeping you up. Use a CPAP machine if you need one. So that's for sleep apnea, where people stop breathing multiple times a night because their airway gets restricted. And that's cutting off oxygen to the brain, which is not good for the brain. So using the CPAP machine just helps to force air into the lungs. But use sleep medications as a last resort. Most sleep medications are benzodiazepines or downers, and there is a ton of research showing that when people have benzodiazepines active in their system, they can learn and remember about half as much as when those are not active in their system. And they too have a long half-life. So if you take a sleeping pill at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, it will still be active in your system the next morning and interfering with your ability to learn and remember. And exercise your brain. Thinking is literally a workout for the brain. So just like physical exercise, it's increasing blood flow and metabolism in the brain. It's fostering new connections between neurons. It's actually fostering the birth of new neurons. So both physical exercise and cognitive exercise are the only two ways that we can grow new neurons in our brains. Um, how should you stay cognitively active? Well, you can do whatever you want. But my recommendations are just to choose things that are reasonably complex for you, to try to push yourself a little bit so that you really are exercising your brain. Choose things that interest you. Even if your best friends love crossword puzzles and you hate them, don't bother picking them up because you'll just get frustrated by them. So choose things that you're really passionate about, but also try to vary your cognitive activity over time. Our brains are somewhat specialized, and so we want to hit different parts of our brains through our cognitive activity. So choose verbal activities like joining a book club or a discussion group, which will engage more of your left hemisphere, with visual spatial activities like playing chess here or doing puzzles or putting things together or doing like crocheting, which will engage more of your right hemisphere, with planning and organizational activities that will engage more of your frontal lobes. So try to mix up your cognitive activities between verbal, visual spatial, and planning and organizational activities to get a whole brain workout. And be social. Research has shown that older adults who have an extensive social network have a lower relative risk of developing dementia, but as that social network becomes more limited, the risk goes up. So our most isolated older adults are at like a 3 times higher risk of developing dementia compared to those who are more socially connected. And the same would be true for progression of dementia as well, that it will progress more quickly among people who are more socially isolated. But what this research has also shown in terms of social activity is that quality matters more than quantity. That is, it's more important to have a few close friends and confidants for brain health than it is to know a whole bunch of people but not really connect with any of them. So protect yourself, try to stay in as good physical health as you can, eat healthy, think healthy, or stay in good mental health, exercise both your body and your brain, and be social. I think of the Michelin Man when I think about this. That's why he's there. It's like you're building up protective padding to help protect yourself or help to slow progression. And with that, I will say thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. That was great. I think like Julie mentioned at the beginning, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and we can address the questions at the end of the webinar. But I'm going to turn it over to Paulina now, who's going to present on a research study that she is spearheading.
Thank you so much for having me. And so I'm here to speak about the study testing an online brain health assessment on mobile and tablet devices. So, sort of building off of Dr. Anderson's talk, now we know about our brain health. How can we see um, where your memory is at and where those mental functions and how they're doing? So specifically, the purpose of this sort of presentation is we're really looking for participants for the study, and we're looking to spread word about the study as well. So the ultimate goal of this study is to make it easier to detect dementia. So because detecting dementia, it can be really challenging. For example, it could be challenging to determine what is normal aging and what is dementia. And detecting dementia could require continuous monitoring of our daily activities, and many individuals may experience limitations, being referred to a memory specialist unless they have some really serious symptoms. So that's really where brain health screening bridges that gap in detecting dementia and makes it easier through online assessments. And so Baker's has its own brain health screening tool. It's known as Cognicity's Brain Health Assessment. And it's essentially answering the question, is my memory normal, or should I be following up with my preferred healthcare practitioner? So it works essentially like a blood pressure cuff for the brain, in the same way that a blood pressure machine checks to see if your blood pressure is within an expected range. The brain health assessment is checking to see if your brain health and your memory is within your expected age and education range. So in this sense, it doesn't provide a diagnosis, it's a screening tool. It's there to screen for concerns with your brain health and suggest for further follow-up with your preferred healthcare practitioner. So it's screening for problems with our memory, our judgment, our reasoning, our thinking, and the ability to learn new things. And so problem in this region, so in all of those areas, is known as mild cognitive impairment. So that's the problem that could develop into dementia. The assessment that Cognicy has is game-like, and it's available for individuals aged 20 to 94. It's accessible only on a laptop and a desktop computer. It's free. It only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete, and there are 4 different versions. So if you want to take it over time, let's say it's recommended to retake over 6 months to a year, you could get a different version to limit the effects from practicing. So the assessment provides a score on a percentile. So that means how well you are doing in relation to others in the same education and age range. And that's really important to note since many individuals see the word assessment and they think maybe it's sort of like a classroom assessment, but it's really not. In the same way how you can't really fail like a blood pressure machine, there's a specific range you should be falling in. But in this sense, for example, if you get a score of 50, it's not a fail because you're actually average. You're doing better than 50% of people in your age and education range, and 50% of people are doing better than you. And to know about data privacy of Cognizy's brain health assessment and any studies with it, any data and brain health data information is stored in a de-identified manner. So what does that mean? It means that your name and your email address are not associated with the brain health data at all. And the same for this study, it's rather associated with a random subject ID. And they're stored on Canadian servers, and the only people with access to it is my team. It could be used for research purposes, such as the one I'll tell you about today, or other ones when the data is sort of pooled together in a de-identified manner. So one of the main limitations of Cognizy's brain health assessment is that it's only available on a laptop or desktop computer. And from many community organizations that we work with, but also from research findings, we're aware that many older adults are using tablets and mobile devices, as we want to make this more accessible. So how does the study work? So participating in Cognizy's brain health assessment study, participants would need a mobile or tablet device, and they would receive a testing link to test on their mobile tablet device, and they would consent to the research as well using that link. And so in that sense, it's using your internet browser. So that's why it's important to have good, stable internet. In the second week, participants also receive a second testing link, and that's to help validate their scores for all of the tasks. And so you may receive the same version or a different version. Before going into like who is eligible, I'll just briefly go over what this assessment sort of looks like. So this is the brain health assessment in a nutshell. And so just briefly going over it, starting from the top left, participants would try to match the same shapes in as little clicks as possible. So you want to be as accurate as possible and as quick as possible. There are 6 shapes that you'll be matched, 6 pairs of shapes, and the ones that are found would be found in they'll be placed in the shapes found box. And that assessment is done 3 times. So that task is done 3 times across the assessment. And so that is really testing the front part of your brain, and it's testing your recall memory over time. And sometimes we can ask, okay, how can I practice that part of my brain? You can engage in chess or checkers, Rubik's cubes, tangrams, jigsaw puzzles, origami, 3D art, or even playing Where's Waldo. In the top left, participants are identifying how many words are on the screen, and it's a bit tricky because the meaning of the word is sort of tricking our brain, and that's an interference portion. And so it's testing your attention control and your processing speed. And so the interference portion, so that meaning of the word, is checking for dementia and damage in the front part of our brain as well. And so you would use the keyboards to determine how many words are on the screen. And to practice that part of the brain, you could engage in online word color tests. So for example, if the word blue is highlighted in yellow, there's that tricking part. In the bottom left, participants would be identifying recalling faces and names. So there are 24 faces and names that are shown twice in 2 different orders, and you have to memorize them as best as you can. And so it's challenging, but it's testing your memory found in your hippocampus. It's also where dreams are formed as well. Fun fact. And changes in these regions is a good detector of Alzheimer's disease. And so if you've never been good at recalling faces and names, the most important part is that you don't do worse over time. So the change is what's really being measured. To practice that part of the brain, you can engage in playing Guess Who or mnemonics, or memorizing mnemonics like Roy G. Biv. As seen in the bottom left, participants would be creating a path, alternating between numbers and letters. So you'd start at 1, you drag it to A, then drag it to 2, then to B, then 3 and C, and so on. And so you're alternating, so you're using your memory and alternate attention, as well as it's checking for your processing speed, also found in the front part of your brain. To practice that part of your brain, you could engage in following a recipe while cooking, answering the phone while typing an email, so essentially multitasking. So why take part in this study? So you can be part of advancing brain health research and potentially influence policies, procedures, and future treatments. We are also providing gift card compensation to further value participants' time in the study. So we're providing $10 Canadian gift cards per week of study completion for a maximum of 2 weeks for the mobile tablet study. And so who can participate? So anyone between the ages of 20 to 35, 50 to 65, or 80 to 95. Participants would have to be fluent in English. The instructions are in English, but also the faces and names. We want to be measuring your ability to recall in a language that you're comfortable in, and also have no significant concerns in memory or any of the conditions listed on the screen. As well, you need to have access to a mobile or a tablet and be comfortable using that mobile or tablet device. So if you don't have a mobile or tablet, that's okay, or you can still participate in the desktop portion of our study. We are also looking to validate more versions of the current Cognices Brain Health Assessment so that we have more versions to give out, and we are also providing $10 gift card compensation for participation. So if you are interested you could email your interest to research@cognicy.com, and we can help you with the next steps. If you want to learn more about our study, we do also have a website that you can visit. You could scan the QR code on the screen. So that is all for me. Thank you so much to TDRA for giving me this opportunity to share the word and about our study. And I do want to shout out to the Slate Family Foundation for funding the study as well. And these are just some of the references from the beginning of the slide. Thank you.
Wanted to say thank you very much to Dr. Anderson and Paulina for sharing both some of the background, but also the study. Before we get to the questions, I would also want to encourage a lot of what we know about dementia is because of people engaging in research. So if you are interested and you do meet the eligibility requirements, I would encourage you to consider participating in research so that we can continue to build our knowledge base. There are a couple of questions that are in here, so I'm just going to start. So earlier, someone asked about support groups. So you can feel free to go to the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, and through there, you can put in your postal code and it will generate whichever Alzheimer's Society is closest to you. So I represent Toronto, which means the M postal code area, but we have local chapters all over the province that can help you. Each chapter offers their services a little bit different, but I would say everyone is required to offer education, information, and support to anyone who is looking for that type of information. Okay. So the first question that I can see, and you can feel free to let me know this is not a question you're able to answer, but the question is, what is the likelihood of getting Alzheimer's if a parent has had it in their 80s? Is there a genetic test or other tests specifically for Alzheimer's yet?
Yeah, I can answer that. There is a possibility that that would increase your risk. There are literally dozens of genes that have been linked to Alzheimer's disease, but one of them is the most important, most powerful, and that's the ApoE gene. So if your parent had that gene and happened to pass it down to you, that does increase your risk, but it does not mean that you're going to get it. So plenty of people carry one ApoE4 gene and never develop Alzheimer's. Some people who carry two don't develop Alzheimer's. So it's just they're called susceptibility genes, meaning that if you carry those genes, it increases your risk, but the evidence shows that lifestyle can help to reduce that risk associated with that gene. So doing the things that I talked about of exercising and eating well, staying socially connected, cognitively engaged can help reduce that risk that might be conferred by carrying an ApoE4 gene.
The next question, so I'm not sure if it's referring to that Baycrest assessment or another, but will there be an assessment, the assessment available on iPad?
So that's, I guess, what we're trying to do with the study. It's currently not available for the public, but in the study, by recruiting participants, we're able to make it more accessible to iPads and tablets and other mobile devices.
Okay, so basically, study will enable iPad, but if you're not going through the study, then it is only available via
Yes.
desktop. Okay. The next question is does dementia affect thinking as much as in memory?
Yeah, I think maybe the question there is, are cognitive skills other than memory affected by dementia, I believe? And yes, absolutely. So it's not restricted to memory. Things like problem solving, language, so word finding issues can get worse. Processing speed can get slower. So it's not restricted to memory. It's just with Alzheimer's, most often memory is the first symptom, but other cognitive abilities are affected as the disease progresses.
So this is a question with regards to eligibility. So the question is, why does the research exclude the 66 to 79 age range?
That is a very great question, and I wish I could also recruit in that age range because there are many older adults in that age range. This just has to do with how we're analyzing our data. So when we work with a statistician, there's specific points. I guess when you put all the data, it sort of follows like this curve, and there are specific points on a curve where it's going to be analyzed. So we decided to really focus our efforts to recruit at all of those points. So it's really unfortunate that we're not able to recruit during through the 66 to 79 age range and other in between age ranges. But that said, you still can take Cognisys Brain Health Assessment on a laptop or desktop. You're still able to test your memory that way.
There is one comment about the QR code being deactivated, so just wanted to let you know. I do have a question here that says, I've done the cognitive tests in the past. How is this study different from that?
So the assessment itself is the same, but you're just doing it on a mobile or tablet device. So we're really just checking to see if the speed and other things associated with a device isn't really changing the score. So it's the same thing, just on a different device.
And is there a version of this assessment for those with low vision?
So currently, through Baycrest, we don't have one with low vision, but there's so many other cognitive assessments out there, not ones that I can personally promote in that sense. But this one, it does have a limitation that you do need to see the screen, unfortunately, because it's an online cognitive assessment.
I'm just scanning. Question here is it likely that people because of age in their 80s and 90s? So I guess if I'm looking at this question is with age, is it more likely that people will develop dementia?
Absolutely. The risk goes up with age. So somebody in their 80s is more likely to get it than somebody in their 60s. But it's not the case that if we all live long enough, we're all going to get it. That is not the case. So it's not inevitable. There's been a lot of research that's demonstrated that. And one thing that's quite interesting is having the disease versus having the dementia. So a lot of research has shown that and donated their brains to research. They had a lot of plaques and tangles in their brains before they passed away, but they were cognitively intact. So you can have the disease, the pathology, the plaques and the tangles, but it doesn't necessarily affect your cognitive functioning. And then the notion is that some people have been able to build up enough cognitive reserve through their education, through the kinds of occupations that they held, their lifestyle behaviors, that they can withstand the pathology and still function normally. So, whether everybody will develop the plaques and tangles if they live long enough, possibly, but it does not mean that everybody will have cognitive impairment because of that.